Lockdowns and border closures are not the answer. The PM slams the states, telling them to be more like us.
New South Wales is the gold standard. That is where we have to get everybody to ensure that Australia can be open.
But we're not out of the woods as the cluster linked to 2 Sydney hospitals grows. Scary scenes in California, campers trapped on all sides by fire. The terrifying dash cam you need to see as the driver responsible learns his fate in court. Good news for school leavers, end of year celebrations to go ahead, but what will they look like? And Djokovic disqualified, the world #1 booted from the US Open.
This is 9 News.
Good afternoon, I'm Lizzie Pearl. It's been a tough year, but HSC students can end it on a high. The government today giving the green light to school formals and graduations in Term 4.
It may not be the same exactly as what happens in previous years, but I want Year 12 students and their families and their teachers and school communities to know that you will be able to have those key milestone events and you will have something to look forward to after the HSC.
There have been 4 new cases of COVID-19 recorded in New South Wales. 1 is in hotel quarantine and the rest are linked to a healthcare worker who tested positive after shifts at Concord and Liverpool hospitals. Schools at Rose Bay and Lidcombe have been closed after students tested positive to COVID over the weekend. Scott Morrison has called for the Victorian government to pay its own way out of the pandemic while taking aim at the state's roadmap out of lockdown. Live to Politics reporter Jonathan Kersley, who is in Canberra for us. Jono, just what did the PM have to say?
Lizzie, the Prime Minister effectively laid it out for the Victorian government. He wants to see it stick its hand in its pocket to help businesses and people first before deciding how and if the federal government can assist financially as the shutdowns continue to burn a massive hole in the pockets of the federal government. Scott Morrison also spent most of his time at this media conference this afternoon going over Victoria's latest restrictions and its tracing system, insisting New South Wales has a gold standard. That was the standard to be met, and it was the difference between businesses being open and businesses being shut. But he was also highly critical of the Victorian government's roadmap to recovery, saying he hoped it was the worst case scenario and said he had been yet to receive detailed modelling on what it was actually based on. The Prime Minister also suggested if the same roadmap had been applied in New South Wales, well, right now, Sydney would be under curfew. He said he'd be talking to business groups in the coming days and didn't reveal much about the economic impact the Victorian shutdowns beyond the end of September could have on the national economy. That, he said, would be worked out as part of the federal budget, but the existing measures we know are already going to cost around about $12 billion and 400,000 jobs. The State Premier has flagged economic support. The Prime Minister, though, wants to see it.
It is right that the Victorian government make the first response to set out what the economic supports are they will put in place to deal with the measures that they have put in place. The Commonwealth Government is already providing significant assistance to Victorians through the many programs we've had in place now for many months.
And Jono, the government has taken another step towards securing a COVID vaccine.
Yeah, it has, Lizzie. The federal government did have its hand in its pocket today to work towards securing a possible vaccine from 2 of the more promising candidates around the world. $1.7 billion of taxpayers' money will be spent on producing around about 85 million doses of the vaccines from the University of Oxford and the University of Queensland to be made by CSL in Victoria, which would directly get more than $300 million from the taxpayer. Here's what the Prime Minister said.
That is giving us a sovereign capacity to get Australians what they will need should both of those vaccines prove successful as they go through their trials. Now, of course, the AstraZeneca vaccine is in a more advanced stage. The University of Queensland still has some work to go, but we're backing it in.
Now, Lizzie, obviously there's some hope there. Hate to be a dampener on it all, but obviously all of this is dependent on there actually being a successful vaccine candidate. Ultimately, no one really knows when that will be.
Fingers crossed. Jono Kersley there in Canberra, thank you. Well, Victoria's Chief Health Officer Brett Sutton says if the COVID case number benchmarks are met sooner, the roadmap timetable easing restrictions could be revised. Here's state political reporter Andrew Lund with today's developments.
Sunny skies today in Melbourne and some positive news to start the week, with Victoria recording just 41 new cases of COVID-19, the lowest daily increase since June. But 9 more deaths have been added to the state's toll, taking the total to 675. The number of active cases, though, continues to drop, down 91 to 1,781.
No one's enjoying these rules. No one is enjoying having to so fundamentally alter the way they live their lives. But people, I think the vast majority of people know and understand that unless we do this properly, unless we see this off, then it'll just be back again.
Yesterday, the Premier announced stage 4 restrictions would be extended by another 2 weeks from next Sunday as part of Victoria's long road out from the second wave. Health officials say the 14-day average daily case number needs to be below 50 for Melbourne to move to the next stage at the end of September. But Brett Sutton says he won't rule out a quicker transition to later stages if benchmarks are met earlier than expected.
We could miss them on the one hand because we don't get to those numbers, but we should also reflect on being in a much more successful position earlier on.
Business groups, though, are unhappy, complaining they haven't been listened to. The Premier refutes that, saying their input has been taken into account with regards to which industries will reopen first. More consultation, though, is underway now regarding extra financial support, given some businesses face another 2 months without any customers.